Thank you, everybody, for making it today to our fourth C's forum. So far, all virtual. Eventually, I think we'll have one in person one of these days as things are trending in a good direction. But these forums have been a place where we talk about the work that STEPS is doing, especially when it comes to equity in education. And it's meant to bring in the community, some donors, and any stakeholders in our work to learn more about what we're doing. Today, we're going to be talking about young men of color and their experiences at Brookline High and beyond, and how STEPS has supported students throughout that. And we have our two special guests, Donelle O'Neal and Jeffrey Pierre. And I'll have them introduce themselves. So, Jeffrey, do you want to go first? Just tell us a little bit about yourself, what graduating class you were, and what you're doing now.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm going to start the informal process of introducing myself. Name's Jeffrey Pierre. I use the pronouns he, him, his. I was part of the graduating class at Brookline High School, class of '09. I am currently the Florida Ruffin Ridley FRR School Adjustment Counselor.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate it. One of the first STEP students way back in the day. And Donnell, I want to say a little bit about yourself, what class you are at BHS.
Hi, I'm Donelle O'Neal. I'm class of 2023. Play football and baseball. And yeah.
Thank you, Donnell. Appreciate it. And Donnell just got back from baseball practice, so he's a busy person, as are most of us here. But yeah, we wanted to make sure we highlighted the students who were serving, and as we have seen in our work, and the data has also backed this up. Young men of color have really been impacted the most by COVID, especially when it comes to college matriculation enrollment. And our students are not. They've also been impacted a ton. But we want to really shine a light on some successful work and students and alums from STEPS. So we'll just ask a few questions. I have a few questions I want to be asking. If folks have anything that they want to ask, you can feel free to send a question to Tom in the chat, and he'll send them over later to me, and I can ask them during the Q&A afterwards. And yeah, that's how we'll go. All right. I think first off, we're just gonna go to Jeff. So Jeff, what can you tell me a little bit about your experience with STEPS and what kind of support you got from both STEPS and Brookline High?
All right. So I have to first say that I moved into the Brookline school system during my fourth year. And that was when I believe STEPS started working with students in the elementary school level. So right away, I came from the Boston, Brighton school system into Brookline, and being a part of STEPS right away, it was a big shift, because there was a lot of things like getting me into after school programs, getting me into like summer camps, having an advisor, having someone check in on me like every day at school, being like, did you do your homework? How are classes going? So it was a big shift just there. And so some of the supports are, as I mentioned, like those after school programs, which, provided me extra supports on like keeping up with the homework, actually keeping an eye on me, because, coming in and like living where you live, like most likely the parents had to work several jobs. So you needed supervision. So the after school program provided that. And I truly appreciate STEPS because these avenues, these openings, these experiences really changed my perspective. And I really believe that where I was and with where my mom was, where my family was, I would not be as exposed to several different experiences and jobs over the years, like summer internships, being a part of the STEPS Council, speaking in front of like select board, doing a lot of these things if it wasn't for STEPS. And really, I appreciate the experience and the exposure to a lot that they provided.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had something like steps when I was growing up. I was like, well, I guess kind of fortunate that my mom was a cafeteria lady. So that term is kind of antiquated now, but so she got out of work when I got out of school, so it was kind of easy to just go home with her. But Donnell, so what has your experience been with steps? Like, has it been similar to what Jeff is doing, or is it a little bit different than what he mentioned?
My experience has been kind of similar to Jeff's. One big thing that Steps has helped me with is in the summer, they've helped me find jobs and a place to work, which helped me get my job over the summer at Star Market. So that's one thing they help me with. They also, like when I have free blocks at school, there's the Steps room with my advisor, CJ. He's always there. So I can always go there and talk to him if I need to, or go there to do homework. So that's stuff that Steps has helped me.
Thank you. Yeah, and CJ is one of the advisors at the high school, and he supports a lot of students there. And yeah, he's a great guy and really connects well with the young men at BHS. For Jeff, what can you tell me a little bit about how Steps helped you navigate the journey from high school to college and beyond? Because I know there's a few steps after high school. And impressive history.
Yes, I can definitely say that if it wasn't for Steps, I would have totally been lost. For one thing, I truly give it to all the educators and the professionals at the high school. But granted, there is such a high caseload that, guidance counselors, those who are supposed to help with the process of like higher education, may be overswamped, or at least like when I was a high schooler. So it was really thanks to Steps with offering like, let's do some, major exploration. What are you into? Like, what sort of majors would you want to do? Or where do you see yourself like working or doing in life? So being exposed or starting to make a plan there, freshman year, day one, in terms of like navigating to higher education, I am so happy for the FAFSA night, especially in like, I think we can all agree that for higher education or access to higher education, it is pricey and it does come with an expensive price tag. And so being able to get as much money or being able to not pay as much for college is a necessity, especially coming from someone who is low income or anyone who would be low income trying to gain access to higher education. So having that FAFSA night, being like, bringing all your FAFSA, bringing all your W-2s, your incomes from my mom, because again, my mom is an immigrant to this country. And so coming from our background and being exposed to Brookline and where we were, if it wasn't for Steps, I don't know if we would have necessarily been able to navigate all the avenues we can in order for me to access higher education or for my siblings or anyone else from low income in Brookline. So they definitely helped me with the FAFSA night, applying to college, making sure that once I was in college, I was doing everything there. So getting the phone calls from the advisor at the time there, being like, how are your grades? We need to chat up. Okay, I'm coming to visit here. Make sure you have everything ready. And then them really being on top of things and then being there throughout my 4 years there for undergrad and helping me out there. And they even gone as far as to help me, and Tony's in the audience, but even far as to help me with my graduate school application. So again, where I am, I'm definitely giving props to Steps of Success right there.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, and shout out to Tony, who has done a huge number of FAFSAs for students. Like it's ridiculous. I don't know, I probably more than 200 by the now. And yeah, having also done that work myself, it's not easy having to get all the documents from parents, especially when it's first generation folks who, yeah, it's just confusing a lot of the time. But we need folks like Tony and other STEP staff to support our students in that exploration. Donnell, so right now you mentioned that we helped you with some summer programming, right? Like getting you a job in the summer. And what do you think we can do to help you as you're thinking about your next steps after high school? So what are your aspirations after once you graduate, and like what do you think we can do to help you get there?
I think now, like, just getting there is my goal. So I don't really my so for after I don't really know. But for now, uh like with CJ being there as a source to talk to helps me like, keep pushing to have good grades to eventually go to college. And with Miss Williams too, like she just continues to push me to get me to where I need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Miss Williams is here in the audience. I know she's been doing a ton ever since she came to Steps once again. Um, and yeah, we really rely on that partnership with the schools and the nonprofit to provide this wraparound support to our students. And with Donnell, as you're thinking about your next steps, we're going to be figuring out, where to explore colleges and majors and helping you out as you do that. Um, the One of the next questions I had, and kind of came up as I was thinking about both of your answers, Donald and Jeff. What advice would you give youth, like the really young kids, your fourth, fifth graders, um, that like young men of color? What advice would you give them about steps and the ways that we can help provide opportunities or access to resources? Like what would you tell them? Donald, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So would it be like what steps can do or what advice I would give them myself?
Both of them, both.
Myself, I would say like school really matters. Like before, I didn't really think about like before high school, I didn't really think about how important school is. So that's what I would say is like, um, school really does matter to if you want to get to where you want to be. And what was the question for the steps part?
Just what do you think steps can help you with as you grow up, I guess?
Um, well, like at the definitely to take advantage of the after school programs that Jeff was talking about, they like the homework centers and all of that, because that could get you to train good habits
Mhm.
for when you're in high school so that you can do your homework and stuff without it being having to feel like it's out of your way.
Thank you. Jeff, what about you?
I think the advice I would provide is to recognize those small successes. I feel a lot of the time what I'm seeing with youth is that it's sometimes in their mind it's all or nothing. So either I'm successful or I'm not successful, and then anything short of success is failure. So what I would say is appreciate those small successes, because eventually all those small successes will help build a bigger success, because you're fundamentally building your skill sets, you're fundamentally building a mindset that's going to helpfully, once everything comes together, like a little bit of habits here, a little bit of habits here, is going to help make you whole and make you a better person, because there's no way to be perfect. And so the best thing you can do is just to try your best. And so appreciate those small successes, because they're victories for you and you should celebrate you totally. And as well as that, it's okay to ask for help. Everyone who is successful doesn't do it by themselves. There's a lot of help provided in the background and we just don't get to see it. So if you need assistance, please ask for it. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually a strength, because you're recognizing that you need support. And again, those small victories are going to compile together so that eventually you're able to do things on your own. First, you need to take those small steps in order to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. I feel you on that, especially with the asking for help thing. I think, especially as someone growing up in a Mexican American household, Mexican household, immigrant household, where it's kind of like keep your head down, don't ask for help, don't bother people, and just do it on your own. It's hard to get over that hump where you're like, okay, I do need help, I need to ask for someone support. And it does take some effort, but we try to engage our young people to let them know that it's not, you're not weak, you're just like everybody else is needing help too. um Donnell, I remember talking to you a little bit earlier about how sports, especially baseball and basketball, which you play, how important it is for you to incentivize you to keep your grades up, right? Because you got to keep your grades up in order to play basketball, play baseball. So, what do you think we can do as steps as a school to help incentivize you to for academic success, which we know is going to like help you down the line in the future? What other things do you think would be helpful for that?
Like what incentives for
Yeah.
to do?
Yeah.
Maybe like the honor roll kids get like a pizza party one Friday, or some like type of something like that, where like we can, like, if you reach a certain goal, or even if you're at like a C in a class, if you can get that up to a B, you get to go out for lunch with your advisor or something like
Okay. So it's easy as food sometimes. Yeah, I feel that sometimes that was also the way to incentivize me. Still probably the way, honestly. Okay, I appreciate that. And Jeff, I know you've been doing a lot of work as a adjustment counselor, and with your background and as MSW. Um, what kind of resources or education do you think that young men, especially young men of color, need in this time to achieve their goals? I know you mentioned a lot about asking for help and accessing resources, but what do you think we can do as individuals or as a community?
I think, and I've specifically asked a lot of the youth that I work with this particular question, like, what do you need in order to be successful? And from what I'm gathering and what I'm going to like try and summarize is basically there's a need for a space. Um, Granted, like in these times, I think it's been shown a lot with, particularly to race, the importance of like, bringing awareness, having conversations, holding these uncomfortable spaces and safe places. And for a lot of the youth that I'm working with, particularly youth of color, there's a need or a desire for a space in order to like conversate and hold these discussions and to learn these things. My students, they feel that they're not being met in terms of these desires. And so there's a desire to learn, to find out more about them. And I think, as educators, what we need to do is we need to hear these voices and we need to help, answer these calls, especially like with providing a space or holding these discussions. So I think for particularly our students, our boys of color, and like to lead them to success, I think there needs to first just be a space for them to feel comfortable with, especially if, we are saying education is important, but if they're not feeling comfortable in the education setting, then we need to try and shift things so that they do feel comfortable there, and maybe holding a space or creating a space for them to feel comfortable. Like Darnell said, like he can go to the steps room and like he can do homework. There's a comfortable space there specifically for students of steps, but who's to say that can't be for students of color as well? Like we can take something here and we can imitate it and make it accessible for a certain demographic or certain people in order to help make them feel comfortable.
Thank you. Yeah, so it takes intentionality, right, from the schools to be able to provide this space. I know the high schools are going through some times right now. I think people are aware of what's been going on, and I know some people have also said like I think it's important to create these spaces, but what about, do you think it might cause those students to be more isolated from everybody else? Like Donnell, do you think that when you go to the steps room, does that make you feel like you're not part of the broader high school community, or is it just somewhere else that you're a part of?
I feel like it could be both. Like I feel like if you feel like you want an escape from like the actual high school community and you just need a break to go do some homework by yourself, or just be by yourself for a little bit, then the steps room could definitely do that. But also, like, if you want to be in there to like be happy and like be with people that are like you, then that also works.
Yeah, because I think that's important, right? To have a place like a respite sort of from the turmoil at the high school, so to speak. And yeah, I think it's important for, especially for young people coming from 2 years in virtual learning. You know, this year has been a very interesting one, to say the least. Okay, well, sort of switching gears a little bit. Um, when, steps to success, my previous job was a Success Boston. For some reason, that word success just follows me wherever I go. But what about like when you think about success, Donnell, Jeffrey? What do you think that means for you? So Jeffrey, what do you think success means?
I think, the word success has definitely evolved throughout the years. If you were to ask my mom, like as an example, if you were to ask my mom, who's like an immigrant from Haiti, like success means money, like your job, your salary, that is success. But as we shift throughout the years and we see like, money isn't exactly happiness, what you're doing, what you're loving, like that's going to create that space for you to be happy and healthy. And so how I feel that success is, after like evolving from just like that mindset of like just money and what you're doing, is, having success for me is like you're doing something that you enjoy, and that's, producing like happiness, that's like, bettering the world or someone else or yourself, without the expense of like, uh, either like downplaying or like putting someone else down. Like that's not success. So to me, success is you're doing something you love, it's benefiting someone else, whether yourself or another, not at the expense of someone else. And it's just, bring sunshine to the world. So not exactly focusing on money, but like making sure like everything else, like your health, your mental health, you're caring for the people you are, that your job allows you that avenue or that time to like check in on people. So I feel success is doing something that's beneficial and allows you to do everything else in life that is important and like to keep track of.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Yeah, that comes with a little bit of age, right? Where you think a little, a little bit of. I feel that for real. Donnell, so what about you? As a, you're a junior in high school, so like what defines success to you?
Well, right now for me, like success would be getting into college,
Mhm.
but like in the long term, I think I agree with what Jeff said. It's not just like how much money you have. It's more like if you're happy, if you're healthy, and have a like a good place to stay, a good steady job. It's more stuff like that.
And so just having a like, well, I think people always talk about life sustaining wages and careers and jobs, and I think, yeah, that's one of the big goals of our Work Connections program, where we hope to make sure that provide the skills and build those skills of our students, so that when they do end up going to college and pursuing those careers, that they can have a life sustaining career. And it's not something that we'll have to make them move out of Brookline, so to speak. Um, Something else I was really interested in, and I think I'll go into some of the questions from the audience in a little bit. But when I think about, people who helped me along the way when I was coming up in South Texas, it was really, some of my teachers who look like me, who are also Mexican American, who had like similar stories to me, that saw something in me and mentored me and made sure that I knew that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. So applying to college, doing all the FAFSAs, everything, right? What type of representation have you seen that's been able to help you out as you've gone through Brookline? I know, Donnell, you mentioned CJ, right? So is there anything anybody else that you would want to shout out, or other folks?
Uh, yeah, Miss Williams is definitely a big help.
Oh yeah, okay. I bet she's smiling right now. I can't see her, but I bet she's probably smiling really big right now. Yeah, but like, can you tell me a little bit more about why it's so important to see people who look like you, and helping you out?
Um, well, like as a kid growing up, I kind of thought like I'm never gonna need school. I'm going right to the MLB. I'm gonna be the greatest player of all time. They kind of brought me to like the realization that like I kind of gotta go through the school route and get educated because the education could get me to where I need. Like playing I might not be playing the sport, but I might be like a coach or a manager for the sport or turn into something like that in the sport. So they kind of helped me open my eyes to realize like it's not all about like just playing the sport, that I can also do other things around the sport.
I love it. Yeah, I think there's a baseball team around here, right? I've heard about it. Okay, that's awesome. And Jeff, like, what about you? What do you like? Who has been like some mentors or people who have really represented that in your life?
Yes. I'm going to start off like, first of all, there's been a lot of people who's been helpful. So I'm going to try and start off like as early as possible. And that sort of starts off with my STEPS advisor at the time when I was in elementary school. His name was Sean Tu. Cannot remember his last name, but he was a male of color. Really was, when I told you earlier about like, there's this person coming into my house and checking in on me and making sure I was doing my homework, like that was Sean Tu. So like, to see an older gentleman of color, especially like I lacked that in my life growing up, coming in and being like, stop being so headstrong, like think before you act, make sure you're doing your homework first. I know I'm sounding annoying, but like, trust me, like I'm doing for your best interest and putting your best interest forward. So I give it to Sean too right away. Hopefully he gets to see this video. Another person that I truly appreciate, and so the sad part is like, this is going from right away 4th grade in elementary school straight up into high school, because in between there was no staff of color. So right away into the high school, I give it to Malcolm Cawthorn, a history teacher still at the high school, who I think is the MECO coordinator there. So I give it to him, him taking under my wing, him providing me with much advice and details and like where I should try to aim. I also gave it to one of the former STEPS employees here, Jeanette Sargent is her name. So, she was my guidance counselor. Freshman year, I did a lot of dumb stuff, but she was there to help correct me and put me on the straight path. So I appreciate her, especially as a Black female of color. So to have that as like, I will never tell her this, but she was kind of like a second mom. So like, stop being headstrong. We expect better from you. And then one of the last people, because there's a lot there, but one of the last people being one of the former deans at the high school during my time, Mr. Mims. He out of everyone kept it very real. And again, my freshman year, I was very headstrong, very much getting in trouble. But again, to Jeanette and Mr. Mims, they really set me on the right path and, held high expectations and provided me, as much as I thought it was a punishment, but provided me with responsibility to help, reframe my thinking and to see like things from a different perspective.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate that. Yeah, and Adrian Mims, who is now head of the Calculus Project, for folks who might know about that, but it's about getting young people, especially young people of color, in advanced math earlier and earlier, which can really put them in higher achieving courses down the line. And yeah, Malcolm is still at the high school and he's helping with MECO there. And yeah, he's also still supporting a lot of STEP students. I know we have a few of the young men who really gravitate towards him. So thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. I know something I do want to ask as well about, barriers that you may have encountered growing up. I know right now at the high school, there's been some incidents with racism and anti-Semitism and other very disturbing things. So when you think about barriers that you've encountered and had to deal with, what do you think are some ways that the community and STEPS can help support young men of color as we go through those and support you, overcome those things? Donelle, you want to go? How are you going?
I would say, well, one, like with the stuff that's going on in the high school now, like any of the advisors in that steps room or someone that like I could go to and talk about what's happening and what's going on. And like, so for like growing up, like maybe not realizing certain things about how life is, they kind of like showed me the reality of what life actually is and how like I actually have to do certain things in order to be successful.
Thank you, Donnell. Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality. Jeffrey, will you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, in keeping it like focused on in terms of like youth or males of color, I think a lot of the time some of the barriers to success, we do have to kind of look at the environments in which our subjects are within. So if you're looking at terms of like a student of color, male of color in the Brookline school system, so sort of looking at like what are the classes that they're in, what are the like grade levels, what is the difficulty, like the school system that they came from, you know, were they in special ed or not? So a lot of these factors in terms of like how that will play in terms of how they see themselves. So I say that because if we look at the individual level, and again, like this is me being in my role as well as like being a student, like if you see a young boy of color and you put them in special ed, and then you know they're getting these services which is going to help them, you know, relieve some of these deficits, but you're isolating them and you're taking them away, you're putting a particular spotlight saying like, hey, you have this deficit, and how that in hearing that, you know, affects them and what they see, and then you return them to class and like no other peers who are different than them are like being pulled out for the same services. So it's just like looking at who's in special ed and like what's that sense of message, especially in the Brookline school system, where like in Brookline everything is so competitive academically, like unless you're like what I said before and growing up, like unless you're succeeding and unless you're being perfect, everything else is seen as a failure. So, you know, if we're looking at the individual, like a boy of color in special ed, and then like we put them there, and then we put them in the high school where, you know, things tend to ramp up. What is it about their environment that's showing us like, are they being put in an environment that's going to help them thrive and survive and be like, hey, despite you having these deficits, you can still succeed? Or is it like, go to these deficits, try your best, do the work, we expect you to be excellent? And what does that kind of send them as a message to their self-esteem? And like right away, youth developmentally are going to compare themselves to each other. So it's just like, if all the kids of color are going into special ed and all the non-kids of color are like APs, honors, and all that stuff, what does that say for them in terms of like, can I be successful? So I think like a huge barrier right away is like where we start them off in terms of education, and then like looking at their environments. Again, looking at my own life, another big barrier sometimes is also just that financial piece. Like, how am I going to pay for the SATs that are going to help me get into college? How am I going to pay for the, you know, applications fees to send my application to a college to review whether I get accepted or not, to pay for college, to like all these things add up. And so looking at these, like, yes, if the kid wants to go to college, you know, let's teach them all this. But again, like there's these walls, there's these hurdles of like payment, you know, grade levels, your honors, like where and how you see yourself. And I feel another big giant barrier is coming down to this mental health, and like what are we telling these young children of color like in terms of their mental health and everything there. So I know I'm this is going very long, but I just want to touch upon like the few barriers that I think is very apparent right up front.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree. Absolutely. That I know something that we're also really aware of is, you know, tracking and how impactful that is for students' future aspirations and successes. With, you know, I remember getting tracked into AP and stuff, and like that was helpful for me. But I know with a lot of our step students, 50% or more have individualized education plans, which in many cases, that means that some of them are put in those special ed courses or those courses that classes that are not as academically challenging, which, can have a really big impact on their future. So that's something that we're really trying to do with our expansion downwards to, close that opportunity gap as early as we can. And I know when it comes to just financial aid, that's something that we're also trying to do more with, providing scholarships, providing fee waivers, or not even fee waivers, just paying for tests, providing stipends when students are doing internships that aren't paying them, or maybe paying them extra to be able to do that, so that they won't have to, so they can get that experience and explore careers that maybe they'll be interested in as they go along. Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate that. I'm gonna go through some of the questions that have been sent in by the audience. So if folks have some more questions, type them in, send them to Tom, and he'll send them over to me. But something that we were asked, so both from Jeff and Donelle's perspectives, what are some ways that STEPS can better serve our students? Is there anything, is something that we're missing, anything that we can do better? I know there's a lot of spaces to work in. So what do you think we could do more of or better?
I think I'm already helping out with the after school program as much as I can, but I feel like, more enrichment activities, more exploration there. Again, I really am keen in on the fact that like steps expose me to so much that I would not otherwise have been exposed to. So I think just continuing to do so, staying up with like the current times. So like lot more things are going more towards like the tech route. So like probably providing more opportunities to explore careers in the tech or to develop more skill sets there. So I think one way steps can better support our students and to lead them towards success is to evolve with the times and help them keep up with skills that are going to be needed for the upcoming generations and years to come.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Donna, what do you think we could do better to help you and your high school peers?
I think a big thing that steps could need is more like tutors and stuff like that to help us like get to where we need to be in our classes for like, because like me, I'm an athlete. I don't have a lot of time, but when I do have that time and I'm stuck at home by myself with people that don't know how to do the like if I'm at home with my mom and she doesn't know how to do the homework, how am I supposed to get help with that? So I think they need more tutors and people that help support kids like outside of school in their like, education.
Thank you, Donnell. I appreciate that. Yeah, sometimes when I look at some of our high school students' activities and extracurriculars, I'm like, how do you sleep? Like you have so much stuff to do, and it's impressive, to be honest. But yeah, I think tutoring is something that we're really trying to work on. I know Sophia, Miss Williams, who is at the school directing steps, she is really keen on getting more tutoring. So we're working together to make sure to try to provide more of that. Thank you. Question for Donnell. So does college feel like a far off goal because of grades or because of how much it costs, or both?
Could you repeat the first part of the question, please?
So does college, you were talking about, when I remember asking about like, what's your aspiration after high school? And, you mentioned college was getting in, but like you weren't really sure about it. And does it feel like something that is, that you're not sure because of grades, academic stuff, or because of how much it costs? So like financial aid.
For me, it's more financial. Like I'm a good student. I have good grades. It's just the money part of it. Like I'm not gonna go to a school that's gonna give me a better education and put myself into thousands of dollars in debt if it's not gonna work out good for me. So like just it's more the financial part of it instead of the like actual school part itself.
Got it. Yeah, I feel you. I think that's where Tony comes in with a lot of our students, where we get plenty of students who apply to, some schools that maybe won't provide them much financial aid, and we try to make sure that we steer them in a good direction that will provide them a good level of education, but also not put them in debt for 10, 20 years. I see Bob, nodding. Big advocate on that. All right, thank you, Donald. Appreciate that. Good question about internships and getting jobs. So, like, right now, I think employers are really interested in getting more young men of color, more folks of color in their programs. But we still don't have that many young men of color in internships. And how do you think employers could entice you to apply, like encourage you to apply and participate in those programs?
For like kids my age,
Yeah.
like throw some money in there or something. Like something like that, just like, because I mean, like, unpaid internships, yeah, like you're learning something, but it will definitely get a student's attention if you say like, oh, we'll pay you a small bit, like an hour or something for each hour that you do.
Absolutely. So it's money and food is what I've been hearing. Those are the two big things, which makes sense. Yeah, and that's why what some things we do, we provide stipends to our students when they're going to these internships. So and when we do connect young people with internships, we make sure that they're paid. So Jeffrey, was there anything with internships that we were able to help you with when you were with us during those years?
Yeah, I think I got 2 internships at 2 of the Longwood hospitals. My first one was the Brigham and Women's. I worked in the hematology department, so a lot of like blood work, speaking with doctors, shadowing a few bits, and then filing and organizing. And then another year, I interned at Beth Israel. This was during the time during undergrad where I wanted to be an engineer, so I got a chance to work in the clinical engineering department. So there was a lot of working with false limbs, and then like heart pace monitors, pagers, a lot of the bed monitors. So a lot of like behind the scenes mechanical work of a hospital. So that was a very big eye opener, and definitely not something, again, I say like I would have had exposure to if not for steps in this way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that those are some of the things that we expose our young people to, those different types of careers and opportunities. And sometimes you're like, oh, this is not really what I want to do. I'm glad I did this as an intern and not as a actual major or career. So better to learn that early than not. And one of the last questions we've got. So we've seen trends, I think this is national, but also for our students, fewer young men of color are going to college or staying in college once they get there. So what do you, Jeffrey, what did you tell yourself? Like what kind of, what motivated you to stick through and like get through and graduate, even get your master's? And Donnell, like what keeps you going? Jeffrey, you want to go?
Sure. I'll say the easiest answer is debt to answer that. Already having some money behind that I owed. So just to clarify, there's a little mishap with my first year undergrad. There was another person with the same name, surprisingly spelled it a little bit different. They received my financial aid package. I didn't receive anything. Big mishap. Had to take out loans in order to even go to college. So right away, my steps, my folks, my teachers, my educators, they always said like your education is key. You need to make sure you have that. That's going to take you farther in life. So having those voices, and then having this debt that's already there, I'm like, I'm already halfway in. If I give up right now, I'm only doing a disservice to myself. So having debt, having the voices in the background, just pushing forward. Really glad I did, especially in the fact that like having that debt isn't the end of everything. Was able to pay off all of it before going back to grad school. stayed in grad school once again because of that, but it would have been a good service if I didn't go, especially with, I had a lot of encouragement to apply, to try my best to, try and be the difference that I needed when I was a kid. So like, instead of just being like, there should be an educator of color, there should be more educators of color, stepping up to the plate, educating myself so I can be that change that I needed so that no other student would have to suffer that way. So it's a lot of like, again, that the voices in my head and the disservice to myself, and then also, making that change for a need that I saw before.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you for stepping up to the plate. That's what we got to do, right? When we get helped along the way, it's not like you close the door behind you. You help other people through it. Donelle, so what keeps you going? I know you mentioned, CJ and Miss Williams helping you out, and kind of being on you, making sure that you get your stuff done. But what else like keeps you motivated?
One thing that keeps me motivated is like being the first person in my family for like ever to go to college. Like no one I can think of like that's my immediate family has gone to college. So like that's a big motivator to me because I want to make that change in like our bloodline.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, as you know, I was the first in my family to do all that stuff too, and I want to say I helped motivate my younger siblings. Who knows if they had that intrinsic motivation already, but probably didn't hurt that I helped. And I went first and broke the seal, so to speak. And then I think the last thing is just asking both Jeffrey and Donelle, if there's anything else that you would recommend that Brookline does to help out youth of color as we go down 2022.
I guess I'll just say, if we want to help the youth of color, especially like in the coming years, then I think we should really take the microphone and give it to them and hear from them specifically. I think a lot of the times we're here, and especially like as an educator, I feel like a lot of times we're here and we're trying to be like, what do they need? Like, what can we do? What can we change? And like we're the ones that are thinking of this stuff while not exactly providing an ear or providing a space for them to also input. So like to allow the students to be like, what do you need? Okay, let's invite you to the conversation, hear from your input. So I think, in order to help support, we need to invite them to the conversation and like make sure that we're listening.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anything else you would want to add, Donnell, to that?
I just like school-wise, I think because there are kids of color that are just as smart as white students, but their grades don't show because the white students have tutors and people outside of their life that make their grades show and help them get better at taking tests and stuff like that. But that doesn't relate to a Black student who has to go home and take care of a little sibling because their mom has to go do a job or something. So I think the best thing Brookline could do is help the students more in school by getting them tutors and people outside that could help them.
Thank you, Donald. I appreciate that. And I think that is all I've got, at least from questions from my questions and the questions from the audience. Before I hand it over to Rachel to close us out, thank you both to Jeffrey, to Donnell, to everybody who made it today. And Jeffrey, you mentioning like giving space to young folks of color to hear from them, and I hope we did a small part in that, to really hear from people, from young men who have been most impacted by a pandemic, especially in education, and wanting to see what we can do to continue our work and to better our work to support our students. So thank you everybody for coming. Rachel.
Thank you. And I would like to also invite everyone to, you can use virtual applause or other, to both Jeff and to Donelle. This really was a wonderful opportunity for us to hear from you, your thoughts on this really important topic of supporting young men of color in Brookline High and beyond. Because as you know, the goal here at STEPS is to help launch our STEP students into very wonderful, vibrant futures. I'd also like to thank Juan Cantu, our executive director, and Tom, our development assistant and communications assistant. He has been recording this event this evening so that we'll be able to hear it again. And if there's someone that you think would enjoy hearing this evening, but they weren't able to make it, we will be making this available. Please encourage them to listen. And I would be remiss if I did not also thank all the members of the Board of STEP and our wonderful development committee. If you want to wave, if you're in that category, please do so. Don't be shy, Amy, Candy. And of course, I want to thank everybody who came. You are the folks who are supporting the work that we are doing here at STEPS, and we can't do it without you. This is our fourth, we're in our second year, our fourth SEAS Forum event, and each event we learn more. I would encourage you, if you know somebody who would like to join or get more involved with STEPS, please have them get in touch with either Juan or myself. Tom is going to put our contact information in the chat. And please mark your calendars, May 18th. We are having an in-person celebration after 2 years of being out in the wilderness. And it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So again, thank you all for coming, and enjoy the rest of your evening.